All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into the world of movement.
Ooh,
You
movement.
heard that, right?
Yeah.
We're talking muscles, nerves, the brain, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
You know, someone reached out wanting to understand, like, really understand this whole section of a book on motor systems and control.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, I am pumped about this. We're going to uncover some seriously cool stuff about how our bodies move, how our brains orchestrate it all.
It is really amazing, how much is happening behind the scenes that we're not even aware of.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like our brains are running this super complex program in the background, and
Yeah.
you just, like, do stuff, you know?
Exactly.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
The book breaks down movement into three main types. What are they?
Well, you've got those movements that keep your internal systems running, like your heart beating, digestion happening, all that good stuff.
Right, the stuff we don't even think about.
Right, exactly.
Okay, what else?
And then you've got reflexes, those super fast reactions to things like pain. You touch a hot stove, your hand jerks back before you even register the pain.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Right. It's instant.
And then the third type?
The third type. Those are the voluntary movements, the ones we consciously control, like reaching for that cup of coffee, going for a walk, you name it.
Okay, so even just lying here listening to this deep dive, my body is technically engaging in movement.
You got it.
Yeah?
There's always something going on. Even when you're still, your heart's beating, your lungs are working, there's movement happening at a cellular level.
That's pretty trippy when you think about it.
It is.
But let's talk more about those reflexes, okay? They just seem so automatic. Like, how does my body know to jerk my hand away from a hot stove before I even feel the burn? Like, what's the pathway there?
Okay, so picture this.
Yeah.
You touch that hot stove, right? And bam, pain receptors in your skin send a signal.
Yeah.
The signal travels up your arm.
Through your spinal cord and then back down to your muscles, causing them to contract and pull your hand away. All this happens, like, super fast.
Yeah, it's like instant.
Before your brain even has time to process what's going on.
Wow.
It's a super efficient protective mechanism.
So wait a minute, my spinal cord is making decisions without even consulting my brain.
Well, not exactly making decisions. Think of it as a shortcut, a super highway for those urgent signals. It's called a reflex arc.
Reflex arc.
Yep, and it's all about speed, about protecting you from harm.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
What's also interesting is that it's not just your hand jerking back. To pull your hand away, your bicep needs to contract, right? Your tricep needs to relax at the same time.
Oh, I see.
It's like a dance.
Yeah.
They work as what we call extensor-flexor pairs, ensuring smooth and controlled movements.
It's like teamwork.
Totally.
Okay, so this is all happening super fast thanks to my amazing spinal cord.
Exactly. And it's happening all the time, even in the simplest of movement.
Wow.
And speaking of coordination, have you ever thought about how you walk?
Not really.
You don't consciously think about every single step, do you?
I guess not.
Right.
I just kind of do it.
You just do it. And that's thanks to your spinal cord again. It has these things called central pattern generators. Think of them as mini brains.
Okay.
They create these rhythmic patterns of muscle activity, making movements like walking, swimming, even running almost automatic.
So I don't have to, like, micromanage every muscle involved.
Your spinal cord takes care of that for you.
Wow, my spinal cord is like a silent hero. Doing all this work behind the scenes, keeping me upright and moving.
Totally. It's pretty impressive.
It is.
It is. But of course, there are times when your brain needs to step in and take charge, right?
Right, like when I'm learning something new, like playing the piano or, I don't know, mastering a new dance move.
Exactly.
Those are way more complex than just walking.
Yeah.
So does my spinal cord handle that too? Or does my brain finally get to, like, be the boss?
That's where your brain, specifically your frontal lobe, really shines. It's like the command center for all those voluntary movements.
Okay, the frontal lobe, got it.
And within the frontal lobe, there's a hierarchy of control, different areas working together to make those complex movements happen.
A hierarchy. So there's a ranking system within my brain for movement control.
You could think of it that way.
All right, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
So at the most basic level, you have the primary motor cortex, and this is like a map of your body.
A map.
Yeah, laid out right on the surface of your brain. Each part of your body has its own little spot on this map, and it's called the motor homunculus.
The motor homunculus, that's a mouthful.
It is, but it's pretty cool. You stimulate one spot on this map, and your finger twitches, stimulate another, and your toe wiggles.
So it's like a control panel for all my muscles, each one with its own dedicated button.
That's a great way to visualize it.
This is blowing my mind. But it can't be just simple twitches, right? How do we, like, learn new movements, complex movements?
Okay, so as we move up this hierarchy in the brain, we encounter the premotor cortex, which is all about planning and learning new movements.
Planning and learning. Got it.
It helps you figure out the sequence of muscle activations needed to do things like swing a golf club, learn a new dance move.
So when I'm struggling to, I don't know, get that golf swing just right, it's my premotor cortex that's working overtime.
You got it.
Wow.
And once you've practiced, you've mastered that swing, the supplementary motor area takes over.
Okay, the supplementary motor area.
And this area is responsible for the smooth execution of those learned sequences, allowing you to do them almost effortlessly.
Okay, so, like, when I sign my name.
Exactly. You don't have to think about each stroke. It just flows.
It just happens, yeah.
Right.
It's like my brain is storing an entire movement program, and I can just access it without even thinking about it.
It's a great way to put it.
I'm starting to feel like, I don't know, like I have a supercomputer inside my head. But hold on, there's one part of the brain we haven't talked about yet, the cerebellum. What's its role in all of this? It doesn't have something to do with coordination.
You're right. The cerebellum is often overlooked,
Yeah.
but it's a total rock star when it comes to movement.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Think of it as the ultimate fine-tuner,
Okay.
constantly monitoring and adjusting your movements, correcting errors, ensuring everything runs smoothly.
So it's like having a personal trainer for my movements.
Yeah.
Making sure everything is, like, precise and coordinated.
You got it.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But how does it do that?
Okay, so imagine you're trying to hit a tennis ball. Your brain sends the command to swing, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's the cerebellum that integrates all the sensory information coming in,
Like what?
like the ball's speed trajectory.
Right.
And then it adjusts your movements to make sure you hit that ball with the right force and direction.
That's incredible. So it's not just about planning the movement. It's about, like, adapting to the situation in real time.
Exactly.
So wait, the cerebellum is doing all of this? It seems like it's working overtime.
It is, but it's a master multitasker. And what's even cooler is that the cerebellum itself is divided into different parts.
Okay.
Each one with its own specialty.
Like what?
Well, the vestibulocerebellum helps with balance.
Oh, that balance. Got it.
The spinal cerebellum fine-tunes those spinal reflexes we talked about earlier.
Right.
And the neocerebellum, that works closely with the frontal lobe for those complex, planned movements.
Wow. So even within the cerebellum, there's a whole team of specialized areas working together.
Yep, it's a true team effort.
This is just blowing my mind.
Yeah.
But with all this intricate machinery running in the background, it makes you wonder, like, what about free will? Do we actually have control over our actions? Or are we just, puppets of our neurons?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where does free will fit into all of this?
It does. But before we go down that rabbit hole, before the break, we were talking about the autonomic nervous system
Right.
and how it regulates those sleep-wake cycles.
Right.
And honestly, my mind is still blown by that whole suprachiasmatic nucleus thing.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
It is, but it's so fascinating. But what happens when those sleep cycles, go haywire? You mentioned sleep disorders earlier, and I got to say, I'm kind of curious about those.
Sleep disorders,
Yeah.
they're way more common than you might think, and they can really mess with your overall health and well-being.
Really? I mean, everyone talks about insomnia, but is it, like, a real thing?
Oh, insomnia is definitely a real thing.
Oh.
Basically, it's when you have trouble falling asleep,
Yeah.
staying asleep, or both.
So it's not just about not being tired enough.
Not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a symptom of something else going on.
Like what?
Well, it could be an underlying medical condition.
Oh.
Things like sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, even depression.
Wow, I didn't realize there could be so many different causes.
Yeah, it can be tricky. And sometimes it becomes this vicious cycle,
What do you mean?
The more you worry about not sleeping,
Yeah.
the harder it gets to actually fall asleep.
Oh, totally. Like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. So you mentioned sleep apnea, right?
Yeah, what is that exactly?
Sleep apnea. It's a serious sleep disorder where your breathing actually stops and starts repeatedly while you're sleeping.
Stops and starts, like I stop breathing completely.
Yeah, for a few seconds, over and over again throughout the night.
That sounds kind of scary.
It can be, and it can be really disruptive to your sleep, leading to excessive daytime sleepiness.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
And even increasing your risk of heart problems and other health issues.
Wow, okay. So it's not just about snoring, it's a legitimate health concern.
Absolutely. If you think you or your partner might have sleep apnea, it's definitely worth talking to a doctor.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
There are treatments available,
Okay.
like using a CPAP machine, that can really help.
I've heard of those. So what about restless leg syndrome? That was another one you mentioned.
Restless leg syndrome, or RLS. It's basically this overwhelming urge to move your legs,
Okay.
especially in the evening or at night.
So it's like your legs have a mind of their own.
It can feel that way, and it often comes with these uncomfortable sensations.
Like what?
Tingling, crawling, that sort of thing.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, it can make it really hard to fall asleep and stay asleep.
Totally. So any idea what causes it?
The exact cause is still a bit of a mystery,
Mm-hmm.
but researchers think it might be related to problems with dopamine signaling in the brain.
Dopamine, isn't that the pleasure chemical?
It's involved in a lot of things, including movement,
Right.
and there are medications that can help manage the symptoms of RLS,
Okay.
as well as some lifestyle changes.
Well, that's good to know. So it seems like sleep disorders can be pretty serious,
They can.
ranging from, annoying inconveniences to actual health risks.
Yeah, it's important to pay attention to those sleep patterns.
Right. And seek help if something seems off.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about insomnia, sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome. What about something like sleepwalking? Isn't that more of a quirky sleep thing than a disorder?
Sleepwalking or somnambulism.
Somnambulism.
Yeah, it sounds fancy, right?
It does?
It can seem quirky, but it can also be dangerous.
Dangerous. How?
Well, it usually happens during deep sleep,
Okay.
and people who sleepwalk can do all sorts of things.
Like what?
Walking around the house, cooking, even driving.
Driving while they're asleep.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and it can be dangerous, obviously.
Yikes.
But the good news is most people grow out of it
Oh,
as they get older.
phew. That's a relief.
But it's still important to take precautions if someone in your household sleepwalks.
Like what?
Securing the house, making sure they can't access dangerous areas.
Makes sense. Make it?
You want to keep them safe.
Definitely. Okay, so we've covered quite a few sleep disorders now, and it's clear that they're not something to take lightly.
They can really impact our health and well-being.
Sleep is so important for our overall health.
It is.
And if you're struggling with a sleep disorder,
Yeah,
getting it addressed can make a huge difference in your quality of life.
absolutely. Okay, shifting gears a bit now.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that the autonomic nervous system is involved in regulating body temperature. And I've
Yeah.
always wondered about that, How does our body stay at, a stable temperature,
Yeah,
even when it's, freezing cold or super hot outside?
right. It's pretty amazing.
It is.
Our bodies have this incredible ability to maintain that stable internal temperature,
Yeah.
no matter what's going on in the environment.
So is it like our body has its own internal thermostat?
You could say that. It's called thermoregulation.
Thermoregulation. Okay, so how does that work?
Well, the hypothalamus,
That little brain region we talked about earlier?
that's the one. It acts as the control center.
Got it.
It receives input from temperature sensors all over your body.
Really? So our body's, constantly monitoring its own temperature?
Yep, all the time.
Wow. And then what, the hypothalamus just adjusts things to keep us at that perfect temperature?
Exactly.
But how does it actually do that?
Okay, so let's say you're getting too hot.
Mm-hmm.
Your autonomic nervous system triggers sweating.
Right, to cool us down.
Yep. It can also dilate blood vessels near the surface of your skin,
Dilate, meaning,
meaning they get wider, allowing more heat to escape.
okay.
And if you're getting too cold,
Yeah,
it constricts those blood vessels to conserve heat.
so the opposite happens.
Right, and it might even trigger shivering.
Oh, yeah, to generate heat
Exactly.
through muscle contractions.
Wow, so our bodies really do have this intricate system of checks and balances to keep us at just the right temperature.
It's pretty remarkable.
It is. Okay, so last question before we take another break.
Okay.
You mentioned a connection between the autonomic nervous system and our emotions.
We talk about feeling stressed out or excited, but is that like a metaphor? Or is there really a physical link?
There's definitely a real physical link.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Remember those two branches of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic?
Right, fight or flight and rest and digest.
Exactly. They're both tied in with our emotional states.
So when we experience strong emotions like fear or anger,
Mm-hmm.
our sympathetic nervous system kicks in.
That's right.
It's like our body's preparing us for action.
Exactly.
Heart rate speeds up, breathing gets faster, muscles tense up.
That's the fight or flight response in action.
Wow, so it's not just in our heads, it's a real physiological response.
Totally.
What about emotions like joy or contentment?
Mm.
Which branch handles those?
Those are more linked to the parasympathetic nervous system,
Okay.
the rest and digest branch. When you're feeling calm and relaxed,
Yeah.
your heart rate slows down, your muscles relax, your digestive system gets back to work.
So our emotions really do have a physical impact on our bodies.
They absolutely do.
It's like mind and body, where it's like totally interconnected.
They are.
This is fascinating stuff. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
It's amazing how everything is connected, from our movements to our emotions to even our sleep cycles,
It is.
all thanks to this incredible autonomic nervous system,
It's working behind the scenes.
keeping everything running smoothly.
Even when we're not aware of it.
Amazing. All right, I think we need another break here
Okay.
to let all this information sink in.
Yeah.
We'll pick up this exploration in the final part of this deep dive. Don't go anywhere. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the amazing world of movement and the brain. Man, we have covered so much ground already.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has, from those super fast reflexes to complex motor control, and then, whoa, that whole autonomic nervous system thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how much is happening behind the scenes, right?
It is. It really is. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, sleep. We were starting to uncover the different stages of sleep and how our brains are busy, like processing and consolidating memories while we're snoozing.
Right. Sleep is way more than just resting our bodies.
So it's not just about recharging our batteries.
It's like a nightly tune-up for your whole system.
Okay, I like that. So what happens during sleep that's so important?
Well, your body repairs tissues, boosts the immune system,
Uh-huh.
regulates hormones, even clears out waste products from the brain.
Whoa, brain waste removal, that's a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's essential for keeping your brain healthy and functioning properly.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. No wonder I feel so terrible when I don't get enough sleep.
Exactly. When you shortchange yourself on sleep, all those essential processes start to suffer.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. Okay, so we know sleep is important, but I'm still curious about those different stages you mentioned. What's the difference between non-REM and REM sleep?
Okay, so non-REM sleep, that's like the deep restorative sleep where your body does most of the heavy lifting.
Okay, the heavy lifting, like what?
Repair, rejuvenation, all that good stuff. And it's divided into stages, each one getting deeper and deeper.
Oh, interesting. So as we move through these stages, what's happening in the brain?
Well, your brainwaves slow down, your heart rate and breathing become more regular, your muscles relax.
So it's like our bodies are powering down for the night.
You got it. Allowing those internal systems to focus on repair and maintenance.
Pretty cool. What about REM sleep? What's happening there?
Ah, REM sleep. That stands for rapid eye movement sleep.
Rapid eye movement. Okay.
And this is where most of our dreaming happens.
Whoa. So that's when the crazy dreams come in.
Often, yes. Your brain becomes much more active during REM sleep.
Really?
Yeah, your eyes dart back and forth, your heart rate and breathing speed up.
So my brain is basically waking up while my body is still asleep.
You could say that. It's pretty wild.
It is. Do we know why we dream? Like, what's the purpose?
That's the million-dollar question. Scientists are still trying to figure that out.
Still a mystery.
But some researchers believe dreams might help us process emotions,
Okay.
consolidate memories.
Right, like make sense of our experiences.
Exactly. And even practice skills in a safe environment.
So like a virtual reality for our brains.
You could think of it that way.
That's fascinating. So
Yeah.
all these different sleep stages, they just cycle throughout the night.
Yep, you go from non-REM to REM and then back again several times throughout the night.
And that helps us wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go.
Exactly. It's all about balance and getting enough of each stage.
Okay, so sleep is clearly super important, and our brains are doing all sorts of amazing things while we're catching those Z's. But I want to touch on something else you mentioned earlier. Brainwave patterns. What are those exactly, and how do they relate to all of this?
Brainwave patterns, they're like electrical signatures of different brain states.
Okay, signatures.
And we can measure them using something called electroencephalography, or EEG.
EEG, yeah, I've heard of that. So what are we actually measuring with EEG?
We're basically listening in on the electrical activity of your brain.
Eavesdropping on those brain cells.
You got it. And each brainwave pattern has a different frequency and amplitude, and that tells us about the level of activity and synchrony of neurons in different parts of your brain.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are these different patterns, and what do they tell us?
All right, so let's start with alpha waves. These are usually associated with a relaxed, wakeful state.
Like when you're just chilling out,
Exactly.
meditating maybe?
Yep, or even just closing your eyes and daydreaming. Alpha waves have a slower frequency and a higher amplitude than beta waves.
Okay, beta waves those are.
Beta waves are linked to alert, focused attention.
Got it. So when I'm trying to learn something new,
Or solve a tough problem.
my brain is buzzing with beta waves.
Probably.
Makes sense. What happens to these waves when we start to fall asleep?
As you transition into sleep, those beta waves start to give way to slower alpha waves, and then eventually to even slower theta waves.
Theta waves those are.
Theta waves, they're characteristic of those early stages of non-REM sleep.
Okay, got it. And delta waves, those are the deep sleep ones, right?
You got it. Delta waves, those are the slowest and highest amplitude brain waves, and they're the hallmark of deep restorative sleep.
Ah, so that's when our bodies and brains are really getting down to business, doing all that repair and rejuvenation work.
Exactly.
Wow. It's incredible how our brains just shift through these different patterns without us even realizing it.
Right. It's all happening automatically.
This is blowing my mind. Okay, last one. You mentioned gamma waves earlier.
Gamma waves, those are the fastest
Fastest, okay.
and most irregular brain waves.
And those are associated with.
Higher cognitive functions, things like perception, learning, problem solving.
So when I'm like having a creative breakthrough,
Or finally understanding a complex concept.
my brain is probably firing off a burst of gamma waves.
You got it. It's like your brain is firing on all cylinders.
It's amazing how all these different brainwave patterns are constantly shifting and changing.
It is. It reflects the dynamic nature of brain activity.
It really does. It's like our brains are these incredible symphony orchestras, you know,
I like that analogy.
with all these different instruments like neurons and brain regions playing together in these complex harmonies.
And the autonomic nervous system is like the conductor,
Right. Keeping everything in sync.
making sure all those essential bodily functions are working in harmony.
Man, this has been an absolutely mind-blowing deep dive. We've explored so much, you know, from the muscles and nerves that make movement possible to the amazing control centers in our brains.
And we even ventured into the hidden world of the autonomic nervous system.
Right, learning how it keeps our bodies humming along even when we're not consciously aware of it.
It's truly remarkable.
It is. So after all this, how do you think about, you now?
You, that's a deep question.
It is.
Is it just your conscious mind?
Yeah, or is it like this whole symphony of activity happening in your brain, all those things we're not even aware of?
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it? Maybe the you experience is an emergent property of all those intricate processes.
All those neurons firing, all those brain regions working
You're
together.
creating this unique and complex tapestry that is you.
It's humbling, really, to think about all that's happening inside us right now without us even realizing it.
It really makes you appreciate the power and complexity of the human brain and body.
It does. And I think we've given everyone a lot to think about today.
I think so too.
So if you're feeling inspired to learn more, check out the show notes for links to some fascinating articles and resources. We've got a ton of great stuff there for you to explore.
And remember, that's the beauty of a deep dive.
It is.
We uncover those hidden gems of knowledge.
Right. And hopefully we leave you with more questions than answers.
Because that's where the real learning begins.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of movement and the brain. Until next time, keep exploring the wonders of your amazing brain.